All right, welcome everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. Please take a seat if you haven't already. And thank you very much for choosing to spend this beautiful night inside with us. We really appreciate your presence here. My name is Hildy Ginsberg, and along with Bill Richards, come on up. We are co-chairing the volunteer work to head the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. And we're very thrilled and honored to be in that role because it's such an important effort that our town is undertaking. It's timely. We are right on schedule. The last update was in 2010. So now it gives us a really good opportunity to look at what we put down on paper, what we were planning for then, how well we've done, what we still want to do and what to accomplish, and then put that into a revised plan. So we're in good hands. We have a fantastic planning board staff, our planning department staff, and Aaron Zwerko is our planning director, and Julie in the back there is assistant planner. So we're very lucky to have them leading the way. And then we have contracted with North Star Planning. So Ben, right there, and Logan will be leading the effort tonight and leading us through all of the data and the discussion. We hope there's a lot of interactive opportunities at the end for you to really get involved. So Bill and I are grateful that you're here. Would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Hildy. Obviously, we're going to talk about the beginnings of the comprehensive plan tonight. If you think about change, there are really three ways that change can happen. It can be evolutionary, it can be revolutionary, or it can be systematic. If it's evolutionary, you don't have any zoning. People can just move in and put a waste dump next to your house. There's no stopping them. Revolutionary is when somebody does come along and drop a waste dump or a big factory into your house, and suddenly you've got something. As opposed to systematic change, which is what this town has been about and continues to be about. We have planning board, we have zoning ordinances, but all of those things really are guided by a comprehensive plan. And so this comprehensive plan, like others, is going to begin, as you'll hear tonight, based on information, on data. Where are we now? Where have we been? So that using that information, we can think about, as a community, where do we want to go? And so that's what we're here for tonight, give you that background, and there will be more opportunities throughout the summer and fall to learn more about this process. So with that, who's taking over? Aaron's taking over. Good.
Oh, thanks. I don't know. Yeah, let me just get to the slide. All right. Should be good to go. Don't need double mics. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Like Hildy introduced me, I'm Erin Zwerko. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the town. Excited to have you here with us tonight. This is the first real engagement opportunity of the comprehensive plan update tonight, and we're anticipating quite a number of future opportunities over the next year or so. We are building off of the visioning work that happened last year. Around this time, we kicked off with an engagement meeting in late June. Through the summer and the early fall, we developed a vision statement based on engagement that we did with a different consultant, Barry Dunn. So at the table, there was a flyer with that vision statement. We also have printed big over here, so that folks can refer to that during the meeting, but also note that this is draft, and as part of the process that we're kicking off tonight, we will be tweaking that, revising that, making sure that it is still fresh and consistent with the feedback that we're hearing. So we're excited to be moving into the new stage of updating the comprehensive plan with the support of the Comprehensive Steering Committee. So diving into the presentation, on the board you'll see our agenda. So after I'm completed speaking, I'm going to turn it over to Ben and Logan to lead us through the data highlights. So what we've learned over the past several months based on review with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, we want to present to you and get your feedback on it. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. And then around the room, there are some stations that will be more informal, and you're welcome to continue to join us and provide us feedback that way, or later on via the website. So the website is planyarmouth.com, and there will be a virtual opportunities to participate there. And you can find our event schedule as well and sign up for our newsletter. So moving on, that's me. So can I ask the Comp Plan Steering Committee members to wave their hands that are here tonight? So we've got a great group of folks that were involved with the 2010 Comp Plan, newer folks, older folks, and we're really excited to continue on. So you can see their names up there. We're also really grateful for the participation of 2 high school students from Yarmouth High School, who, being this is the last week of school, they have other more exciting things, I'm sure, but we're grateful for their participation as well. So just quickly, the role of a comprehensive plan, what it does and what it doesn't do. At its heart, it is really a land use document, which is why it typically comes out of the planning department. That doesn't mean that it doesn't cover a whole range of things, but all of those topics, which we'll go through tonight, relate back to how we use the land or how we propose to use land. So as you can see on the screen, really it sets that high-level vision and guidance for a time horizon, and typically it's 10 to 12 years. It also will identify priorities and action items to achieve that high-level vision. Again, I had pointed out the vision on the big board earlier, so keep that in mind, that we're always trying to relate what we do over the next 10 to 12 years back to that vision statement. So what doesn't it do? It doesn't say that this moment in time is how we will plan for the future. Things change and evolve over time, and the plan needs to be nimble enough, and ultimately the implementation committee needs to be able to evolve with challenges or opportunities that arise over the time horizon. So it also doesn't mean that we can't do other planning activities. The town of Yarmouth has a great staff, and we do so many different things during each year over year, between construction projects that add sidewalks or extend the Beth Condon pathway, or we do investments in our community facilities like we saw with the public safety building and with the school buildings most recently. So it doesn't halt time. It has to be able to grow and evolve with the community as the community grows and evolves. So again, what is Plan Yarmouth? So really it is that update to the 2010 Comprehensive Plan. We kicked off meetings with the Comp Plan Steering Committee back in January. These are public meetings. We meet on the 4th Tuesday of the month over at Town Hall. Please feel free to join us. We'd love the company. You can join in person or via GoToMeeting, which is the virtual platform the town uses. And we plan within early next year to have the first draft ready for review. But today, you can also go on the website, that's Plan Yarmouth, and check out the work that we've been doing for the past several months and learn about the work that we'll be doing over the next several months. So tonight, like we mentioned, this is data highlights, so it goes through the existing conditions. In the fall and into next year, we'll be talking about future land use, and identifying those goals, policies, and strategies. And always throughout the process, looking back at that vision statement and making sure that it's still consistent with the feedback that we're hearing. So you can see on the screen the project team. We're very lucky to be working with North Star Planning in collaboration with their sub-consultants, which bring a wealth of local knowledge. And a lot of these groups have done work in Yarmouth in the past, so they also have sort of a baseline understanding of the community. So we're very lucky to have that knowledge, that depth of knowledge. And the most important part is all of you, of course. So we want to be able to participate and hear from you over the course of the development of this plan. And that's through engaging through our website, meeting us out in the street, and some of those pop-ups. One of the flyers at the table has our initial list of summer activities. And you'll see that it will grow if you visit the project website. Also, please join our email newsletter, and we'll be sending other direct mail over the course of this project. And just to wrap up, I think my slides, you can see on the screen where we are right now and what we'll be doing over the next about year. So ultimately, about this time next year, we'll have an adopted plan that's approved by the state, which will be really awesome. But really, we'll be coming back to the community in earnest and with full force later this year, starting in the fall. And I think I'm turning it over.
Yeah, Ben, did you want to speak to this?
Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm Ben Smith with North Star Planning, and as Aaron had mentioned, this is really a chance for us to check in. We've been working with the committee, doing essentially the big research project, understanding existing conditions and the inventory chapters of the plan. And we want to share that with you tonight. And also talk a little bit about the context. There has been a lot of change in Yarmouth and around Yarmouth since the last comprehensive plan was adopted in 2010. Among those, this is not a comprehensive list certainly, but awareness of climate change impacts has come to the forefront nationally, and the town has issued an emergency declaration earlier in this process, just right before we started actually in 22. COVID happened and still is with us, but that's changed the way people work, travel, socialize, and gather. There is a statewide housing crisis. So since 2010, that was around the time of a recession that was caused by a housing bubble burst, housing market crash. We're essentially on the other end of that spectrum these days. And there have been a lot of demographic changes within the county, within Yarmouth, that are important to understand as well. So within the town, Yarmouth, as Aaron said, does have a long history of good local planning. And since 2010, the town has been quite busy with zoning updates that were called for as part of the comprehensive plan. They've adopted a complete streets policy. There's been a lot of work recently with historic preservation and a demo delay ordinance. The open space plan that North Star Planning has some, we helped the committee with that. That was part of our experience with Yarmouth that Aaron had mentioned back in 2019. And affordable housing is certainly at the forefront. I'm sure folks here in this room are aware and maybe even involved in some of that work that the town is doing. And then as far as capital planning and facilities, Aaron had mentioned some of the more notable projects earlier around school renovations, the new public safety building, and even going back to the town garage renovations that had taken place since 2010. So with this, I think maybe I'll just continue a little bit, or did you want to jump in? Essentially, we're not starting from scratch. We've joined a process that began last summer, and that work was really focused on understanding a start of an understanding around the community's vision for the future. And you can see the draft vision statement. I'm sure a lot of you have picked those up as you were coming in, but it's really based on some core values around natural environment, a connected community, which means strong community connections as well as transportation and accessibility connections, the value of history and culture, natural history as well as the settlement history of the town, and a welcoming and inclusive environment, strong sense of volunteerism. So with that, I'm gonna bring up the next mentee and turn it over to Logan after this.
Yeah, so wherever you see the question marks, we're gonna stop and ask you to answer a Menti question. So this is an opportunity for you guys to tell us what might be missing from that value statement that Ben just went over. It might already be in the vision statement, but we'd like to just get an idea of what might be missing.
So I think some of you had some experience with this a moment ago, but this, instead of asking folks to put away their cell phones, this is where you get to interact with the presentation a little bit.
Can you put the
Not while this is on. But it had to do with
It was natural environment, connected community,
welcoming.
welcoming and inclusive, and history and culture. Yep.
Is this going to display? So we'll have a few more of these throughout the course of the presentation. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but this is a really good way, I think, just to check in with folks as we go.
Yeah, we can give it.
Economic development, civil discourse, embrace economic and other types of diversity. Stewardship. Native American settlement. Cool, thank you.
5 more seconds or so. Yeah, you can change slides. All right. So I am going to do my best to walk us through some of the highlights from the existing conditions inventory. So all of the draft inventory chapters will be available on the website. We'll do an email blast as soon as this recording is available from tonight. So we have about 200 people on our email list. Thank you if you're one of them. If not, encourage your friends and neighbors to sign up for our email list, and we'll be making sure all this information is easily accessible on the website. So there are 12 topics that are required by the state for us to study as part of the existing conditions inventory analysis. So as I mentioned, this presentation is our first attempt to really understand where we are and share some of the highlights that we've gathered with you and give the community an opportunity to react to that and tell us where we might be off or where we need to dig further. So these are the 12 topics, as I mentioned, and next slide, please. So starting with population and demographics. And I'll go through these, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, squiggle them down and ask us at the end. Okay, so population and demographics. So the population of Yarmouth has slowly and steadily been increasing over the last 30 years. We've also seen, next slide, please, an increased share of school-age children and elderly population compared to the state and county. Yarmouth's median age, 49 and a half, is older than the state median, which is about 45 years old. And we also know that Yarmouth is a wealthy community as compared to the state.
Just before we went off this slide, the circles represent Yarmouth data compared with Cumberland County and the state. So anywhere the circles are above those columns, that's where Yarmouth has a disproportionate share of that population category. So school-age kids and people over 50 are represented very well in Yarmouth.
And we can also see that Yarmouth is a wealthy community as compared to the state. So same kind of idea here. We can see that over almost 25% of the distribution of Yarmouth's population makes over $200,000 household income. So it's a very wealthy community compared to the state and the county. So these are our population projections. You'll see two lines here. So the blue line is the state projection, which has the population, there's the band, which has the population slowly decreasing. But we can kind of ignore the state projection when you're going to come up and ask me why when this presentation's over. But basically because the state is looking at the share of the population compared to the county. So when we look at Yarmouth's local historical population growth rate and we extrapolate that, that's that orange line. So when we look at the historic trends, we can get a much better, hopefully closer, more accurate projection. So that historic growth rate is predicting about 1,000 more residents by 2040. So a slow, steady population increase like we've seen over the past 30 years. For housing, so we've learned that most of the housing in Yarmouth is single-family homes. About 70% of all housing in Yarmouth is single-family. And we've also learned that nearly 90% of new development in the past 10 years has also been single-family homes. So we're only adding to the single-family homes. We also know that the median home price has increased significantly in the past decade. So we can see up at the top of the slide the median income from 2010 to 2022, and the median home price went from $270,000 in 2010 to almost $815,000 in 2022. So it's increased significantly in the past decade. We also know that 84% of households currently living in Yarmouth are unable to afford the median house selling price. So we've learned that Yarmouth has the lowest affordability index rating of any town in the state.
So even being a very relatively wealthy community based on median income, knowing not everyone in Yarmouth is wealthy, the home prices have vastly outpaced income growth.
So we're going to ask you, what type of housing is needed in Yarmouth? Yeah. So if you open it up on your phone, you'll be able to read it on your phone. But the options are single-family homes, townhouses and condos, duplexes, detached accessory dwelling unit housing, apartments, elderly housing, or multi-generational housing.
Right.
Choose one. Okay.
So for the folks who are just coming in, people are participating using their cell phones. And if you go to menti.com and type in the code at the top of the screen or in front of me on the podium here, you'll be able to participate as well. And it looks like apartments is the green column is clearly in the lead.
Give it 10 more seconds, then we have another housing question.
And it is a little tricky. You can only pick one. We did that on purpose. Just to kind of, again, gauge the opinions in the room. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question.
Where should new housing be in Yarmouth? So the options here are along Route 1 and major corridors, along Main Street, within the existing village area, or in the rural areas or islands. Just new housing in general. Yeah, any new housing.
So the leaders seem to be along Route 1 and within the existing village area. Hello, yeah. That's very true. So we're hoping that these questions will stimulate some thoughts and give you the chance to have conversations with your neighbors once we're through the presentation. This is where those stations around the edge are going to be useful for you to say those kinds of things like, well, it depends, or this is appropriate here, that would be appropriate somewhere else. So we do want to build in some of these things, but there's obviously more to the story with any of these questions.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
Yeah. So this image up on the screen for economy, it shows the retail trade area for Yarmouth. So we can see that Yarmouth and North Yarmouth make up the retail trade area for Yarmouth. The next slide, this shows, so the purple dots are where businesses or jobs are located. So we can see from this information that there's no one single large employer in Yarmouth, but a variety of small and mid-sized businesses, mostly in information services, professional, and healthcare industries in Yarmouth. So Yarmouth has 3% of the jobs of the job total in Cumberland County, and we've seen in the past decade significant job growth in Yarmouth, although it's only a small share of the total jobs in the county. So the changes we've really seen over the past decade is that Yarmouth has continued to gain jobs, really transitioning from a bedroom community, which is, just is a planner term for where people tend to live, but there's not a lot of jobs. We call it a bedroom community. So it's transitioning away from that to be more of a job center as well as we continue to grow employment and more people come to work in Yarmouth. We also know that there's increasingly more people working from home, so about 17% of Yarmouth's total labor force works from home. So as Yarmouth economy continues to grow, we are starting to ask the next question, which is, what type of businesses would you like to see in Yarmouth? Yeah.
I think so.
I don't see any bangs on this.
National brands.
So one of the things while folks are doing this is when we talked about retail trade area, that was the first economy slide. It's really an indication that currently a lot of the folks are meeting their daily needs in town. If you live in Yarmouth or if you live in North Yarmouth, those are the towns that Logan had mentioned. Daily needs are things like grabbing groceries or a pharmacy, a quick meal, going to a bank perhaps. And the idea here is that Yarmouth is located between a large regional center in Freeport, as well as a large retail area is really still developing in Falmouth. So the role that Yarmouth is playing is much more local than some of those other types of regional economy uses. So the question, I think, will become, as Logan had mentioned, Yarmouth is getting more and more jobs, and it is seeing some moderate population growth. How will the economy change based on some of these trends, and what should the town be planning for? And that might be an indication of what you're thinking about as you answer some of these questions. Small businesses, restaurants, business incubator are some of the top categories there.
Yep. So for transportation, sorry that this bubble is, or this pie chart is kind of hard to read, but it's basically telling us that 76% of people commute to work in a single occupancy vehicle, while only 2.7% of the population walked, biked, or used public transportation to commute to work. So we see, when we first toured Yarmouth, we saw all the kids riding to school on bikes. So we know that there's a strong bike culture among the school-age children here, but, why isn't that translating to people commuting to work within town, or just to get around town for daily needs? And next slide. We've also learned that 85% of people who work in Yarmouth commute from surrounding towns, and only 16% of residents who live in Yarmouth work in Yarmouth.
And that could have something to do with the low walk and bike rates. If most of the people who are part of the Yarmouth labor force are working in other communities. You want to talk about this a little more? Or go to the.
I think that I covered the points.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question we're asking for transportation: which of the following transportation priorities would you believe would have the greatest positive impact? Improve public transportation options, enhance walking and biking infrastructure, reduce traffic congestion and an efficient road network, accessibility for seniors and people of all abilities, and sustainable transportation initiatives, electric vehicles, ride share, things like that.
Ben, you've got some dinosaurs in the audience who don't have telephones.
Yes. So we do have the note cards that people can participate with and submit those if you want to participate and don't have or don't want to use a cell phone for this.
And we'll also be folding all these questions into the survey that will be going on over the summer. So if you didn't get a chance to answer them here tonight, you'll be able to answer them with the survey over the summer online or in a hard copy at Town Hall.
So public transportation has caught up with biking and walking infrastructure.
Wonderful. So the town is currently engaging in a climate action planning effort. So we are working closely to collaborate with the folks working on that effort that should wrap up around the end of this year. And so that'll tie in nice, the climate action planning effort will tie in nicely to the comprehensive plan effort. So for natural resources and climate, we've understood that Broad Cove, Royal River, Cousins River, and Pratt's Brook are important marsh migration areas in town that are at risk of sea level rise. And this next image shows flooding on the causeway between Cousins and Little John Island in Yarmouth at high tide. So I think the joke is that climate change comes to Yarmouth once a day. And then this was that storm surge from the December 23rd storm. So this is the Royal River surge that covered the parking lot in almost a foot of flood water there.
Does everybody know where these images are? Yeah.
So we're starting to experience the impacts of climate change today in Yarmouth. And trying to get a grip on what our vulnerable pieces of infrastructure are and how we can start to plan for the changes that are coming in the next decade and beyond. This is the Royal River, which is an important community recreational resource and connects Yarmouth to the ocean. So Yarmouth is at the bottom of the Royal River watershed. So there are implications that other neighboring towns, their policies will have on Yarmouth But then there are things that Yarmouth is currently exploring, such as the fish passage and potential dam removals, which will have regional impacts for the watershed as well. So one more question, are any of the following vulnerable or unprotected natural resources in Yarmouth? So we heard a lot in the vision statement about protecting natural resources. So we'd really like to get an understanding of what people feel are underprotected or vulnerable natural resources here in Yarmouth. And if you haven't checked out the ongoing climate action work, I would encourage you to do that. They have some a public meeting last week with activities that are up on their website.
It's all important.
Streams. Yeah. If only. Oops.
So the Royal River certainly is up there, and wildlife habitat in general is the other. But it's pretty even distribution.
Okay. So we also looked at the changes in public facilities. So this is the new municipal garage from 2013 and the public safety building that was completed in 2021. We also know, next slide, that fire rescue and police calls have increased in the last decade, and we also know that school enrollment has increased. And in 2022, the pay-as-you-throw program was implemented, and it's too early to tell, but we believe that it's had a positive impact on total tonnage of trash decreasing. And then almost getting to the end here, thanks for your patience. So the town maintains 677 acres of open space and 28 miles of trails. There's a need for connecting those open space and trails in town. And over the past few years, there's been an increase in demand for trails and access for safe walking and biking. The YCS saw the highest usage of parks over 2021, 2022 because of COVID, people getting outside, which is great. So we have one recreation question. And then this is, I think, our last question. So what can the town do to improve access to open space and recreation facilities? Nice elevator music.
Yes. Okay. Clearly, public access to the coast, and the ocean, the river is something that might be a focus. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So this is the current growth area that was identified in the 2010 comprehensive plan. So the red shows the growth areas, the green is the yellow is the limited growth, and then the green is the non-growth areas. So it's kind of intuitively backwards, but so as part of this process, we look at those growth areas and understand, are those growth areas need to change? Because they have implications for policy going forward. So we know that residential development comprises 71% of all land uses in the town. As I mentioned, we will discuss the non-growth areas, or the growth and non-growth areas, as part of the future land use workshop. And we also know that multifamily housing is not allowed in many areas of the town. So as we start to, understand more about what our goals and priorities are, we're really trying to understand, do our ordinances match our goals and priorities?
So, show of hands, who knows what a growth area is? Almost half. So the Aaron had mentioned at its heart, the comprehensive plan is a land use plan. And one of the state requirements in statute is to designate growth areas, which are places to encourage, incentivize, or allow new development and change to occur. And they also designate rural areas, which are places to protect from the impacts of development, places you want to disincentivize or discourage development and change in the future. So those general terms are things that we'll be talking about over the course of the project. So again, this is from the 21 plan, and you can see the red areas are the growth areas. Those are essentially around the village, around the river mouth, and out on the end of Cousins Island. And a lot of the other surrounding areas are the rural areas, places for nature, lower density, and so forth. So we'll certainly be discussing that, seeing if that still rings true for folks, and discussing the need for potential updates to some of those ideas.
So we have some activity stations set up around the room. So we have the draft vision statement here. I encourage everyone to read it, leave us comments. We have the idea board set up all around the room here. So it's pretty open, but they're all 12 topics. So if you have a question about a topic, want to know more, have a priority action or an idea that you're excited about, visit the stations. And then we have the map station in the back corner. And that is really asking for two things. So the blue dot is where do you want growth or change? And the orange dot is what should be conserved, protected, or stay the same. And we'll also be, as Aaron mentioned, we have members of the comp plan team around the room to answer any questions that you have. If you have questions beyond tonight, visit our website, planyarmouth.com. You can contact us directly through that form there. And we will be at pop-up locations throughout the summer as well. So that's the map, that's the topic boards.
Do we want to show
just
some of
the
summer things?
Yeah, just the summer things. We'll be at pop-up locations over the summer with a survey and with some of these activities as well. So now we have 20 minutes or so for a Q&A session before we
15.
let you loose on the activities.
Yeah, so before we jump into the questions, we want to give people a chance to ask questions about what you've seen, what you've heard, what you're curious about that we haven't talked about yet. Before we do that, there is a drawing. You may not have come for the drawing, but there is a drawing. If you put your name on a index card and drop it in the box, you can win a T-shirt with a brand new town logo. Be one of the first people in your neighborhood to have the new town logo on your long sleeve T-shirt. So pretty cool. So we'll take a moment. We'll do Q&A, and then as people are milling around, hopefully you have a few minutes to engage with some of these things. Also, definitely stop over there as well.
Then just as the first one, what you showed here was. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Don't push any buttons. No, okay. No pressing of buttons, I'm told. That's good because my buttons are easily pushed. In any case, what you have seen here, as I'm sure you realize, is a summary of a whole lot of information that was produced. And so I guess, Ben and Logan, will those documents, that whole thing, they will be available. So if you want to get down and see even how these things came about, even just the summary and the information behind them, please look at them. And we're looking at some of them are 20 pages long because there was just a lot of research that needed to be done. So maybe we can tell people how they can get a hold of those.
They'll be on the website, and we'll email them out this week as well, the links to all of them.
You're next. Someone right behind you.
This might be better addressed to town staff or people who've been here all along, but any, Aaron, any surprises in the data so far?
I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of surprises in the data. I think some of the data is lagging a little bit because it doesn't, the census data doesn't incorporate a lot of what we've seen through the pandemic. So a lot of that relates to economy, a lot of that relates to housing. I think as Ben had on that context slide early in the presentation, it's that sort of sets the stage for some of the data that we are looking at. And I think that some of that is important to acknowledge that the data, because there is some lag time in that, needs to still catch up. So we're going to do our best to figure out how to supplement, readily available data, the census, which is, the preeminent source in a lot of these, and dig in deep with the community to get a clearer picture. But I think a lot of it goes to the good plan, not to whatever. A lot of it goes to the good planning that the community has done, whether it's, my predecessors and the work that they've done, and the direction that the town council has given in its work with the town manager, but also just, setting that stage. There's more work to be done, and I think we'll start seeing some challenges that this plan will want to address. And chief among those, I think, is looking at the affordability of our community. So I hope that answers. Thank you.
Yeah. This was the big surprise for me. The knowing that housing is an issue everywhere, it really seems to be uniquely impacting Yarmouth. And again, that median income is among the highest in the state. It's over $100,000 per household. And your household may not, be at 100 or it might be over, but that's, the median. So half of the people make more than that as a household, half the households make less than that. But looking at the median home price, even since 2020, just a few short years ago before the pandemic, it was still $500,000 for a median home. And that is not affordable based on the income levels. So it's only become more acute in the last few years.
I had a question when you had the map up of growth areas, and we've been talking about growth with homes and some businesses and stuff, but Central Maine Power blob of land was on that. And is there some reason that that's a growth area? The Cousins Island one, yeah.
So I think it's included because it's industrially zoned. And the industrial zoning districts were targeted as growth areas. I think there's also an opportunity over the horizon of this plan for the community to think about how we want to plan for that property. It is privately owned, so we're not really at the table, but hopefully the CMP and Florida Power and Light, which owns the property, will be willing to engage in those conversations with us so that as they, if and potentially as they decommission that facility, we have the opportunity to set the stage for something that meets the needs and the wants of the community. So I think it was set as a growth area because of its specific zoning district.
We'll go to you.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there a plan for the new Mainers who are coming? I know that last year, I think it was, 77 new students came into the Yarmouth schools, and I wrote to the superintendent, and he said he was not aware of it till 3 days before. So I'm just wondering, does Yarmouth have some kind of plan or I've heard from other communities, South Portland, Portland, Auburn, that they've run out of space for this. And it seems like it would be good to get a handle on, do we have a say, like what's the plan there? Because it's a little disconcerting when your taxes go up 7% from something that you didn't vote on or know anything about.
So it is something that we need to be more active. It's not necessarily something that the comprehensive plan will be largely focused on, because I think beyond the new Mainers or other folks that might come to the community, we have to be planning to be able to house and accommodate all new community members. It is a regional issue right now, and the town of Yarmouth has invested in a regional solution. It's not a perfect solution, but most recently the town council has provided some very minor amount of funding to support the development of housing units in Portland. I believe a site has just been identified to start incrementally accommodating those new Mainers and new residents to any community. But it is definitely a regional issue. It is not something that one community can solve. And I think it also requires the state to be proactive in that conversation as well. So it's an evolving situation, and much like Yarmouth, communities are surprised potentially by the addition of new community members. But as we understand more about the trends there and the needs, particularly of these community members, I think we can better direct them to getting the support services that they need, maybe connecting them with work if that's a possibility, and providing that crucial housing aspect. You're welcome.
I think there was a person over here and then one in the back.
Just looking at the median home sale price, and I'm a realtor, so I look at these numbers a lot. I'm just curious, we've had some historic really high numbers, like an $8 million sale and a $7.5 million sale, which would obviously skew those numbers higher. Do you take that into account and maybe toss out the highest one or the lowest one? Because we still have homes that are priced in the 300, 400, 5, all the other number or grid numbers. But it just seems like if we've had this crazy number that would, if you had 7.
Right. So the median home price is what Maine State Housing uses when they compare cross communities. And there certainly will, houses on one end or the other will impact the median number.
Yeah.
But I did hear someone in the audience say it doesn't impact it the way it does like an average or a mean, where if you have one really, really high outlier, it can pull everything a lot. The median is really half the homes are less and half the homes are more.
Okay. So, sorry, I misunderstood that.
Yeah. Again, it's a measurement that's pretty standard across the state, and it is good to understand that it's a measure. It's not a perfect reflection, but it is a pretty good measure that is accepted and used across the state.
Well, there's no doubt it's high.
Yes. From a planning, that is the planning takeaway. Yes.
Ben, who is next?
The gentleman in the back.
Thanks, and thanks for all the data. It's really great. Just a quick follow-on. I was going to ask the same question. I actually did a presentation on Saturday. I'm a member of the Multiple Listing Service, which produced a median for 2022 of $1.05 million. So I'm wondering, where did this data come from? And you can answer that. It's not a big deal. I was just curious because it's a different number.
The Maine State Housing Authority.
Okay. So the Maine Multiple Listing Service would be even higher, just $1.05 million. Secondly, you had a slide up on the growth area before, And I saw a slide, it wasn't presented tonight, but I think you guys did it, and I liked it. It showed where all the building permits had been issued in the same time period. And when I saw that, I said to myself, gosh, if we could overlay that with the growth area, that would be interesting to see if are we putting the growth in the growth area? And if you guys could just blend those, it would be, I think, pretty informative.
Yep.
We know that 47% of all new development was in growth areas. So we're not necessarily achieving growth in the growth area. Anyone else questions?
Well, yeah, we can take a couple more, and I think there's one in the front,
Up front,
and then right here. We'll get you. You can have the last word, Ed.
So do y'all, as you do this process, do you look at other communities either around Maine or around the nation to sort of benchmark against and say, you know, here's someone who's 10 years ahead, similar size, similar ecological draw, community draw, and here's how they did it? Or does it just kind of live inside of its own bubble, if you will?
Yes, I won't flip back to it again unless you want to see it, but I feel like I've been going between this slide and the housing slide. But the housing slide, like a lot of our data, is benchmarked with other communities in the region. So we're not necessarily going to, are there other Yarmouth-like towns in Massachusetts or Florida? But often we're comparing population, income, educational attainment, other demographics with other communities in the area that often end up being, and it's not the same for every measure, but Freeport, Brunswick, Falmouth, Cumberland. So you can start to see in the housing and in population, frankly, where, you know, some decades, if you look back 3 or 4 decades, Falmouth grew a ton in the 90s, where Yarmouth has just been more a slow, steady, very moderate growth. Falmouth had a big jump and then dialed it back to something that was like in the 5 or 6% every decade. So they've started to pull away from some of the peer communities population-wise. And I think you can see that when you drive around Route 1 in West Falmouth and those kinds of places. So Yarmouth is a very small geography. It is, density-wise, it's the highest density. It has more people per acre than Portland. So it is in Cumberland County, the most densely settled community. So there are really important open spaces, some lovely scenic views, really iconic kind of places that you really associate with Yarmouth. But the flip side is, it is a community that has grown and continued to grow. It's been built out generally along the waterfront and along Main Street, and that's where a lot of the activity remains today. So that's something we're going to continue to explore. We often look back with some of the peer communities, just a final point, and looking at Yarmouth over time. So we can look back and say, what was, you know, census by census going back, how has the jobs changed, how has the population changed? One final one, and then we can, we'll be here to talk as people move around, so we can still answer a few questions as we go. And don't forget the t-shirt raffle.
Thank you, Ben. Early on, there was a slide as to the purpose that was Aaron presented, and the phrase was used, this would be an update to the 2010 comprehensive plan. And I would hope that the word update scares me, because not asking for a base zero approach, however, this existing land use slide is an example of the designated growth area. In 2017, there was a very robust public process where there was a lot of pushback against that designated growth area. So what I'm saying is, don't take it as a given. If it's in the 2010 plan, we're not talking about, I hope, not just an update, but a re-examination where that's warranted. And another suggestion or question I would have would be constraints on growth. There seems to be a drumbeat building for growth of population. And my question and hope is that you will be engaged in a robust and in-depth series of conversations with the school department as to what their capacity is for increased enrollment before we start bumping into the need for expanded facilities, staffing, and so on. Because we just passed a bond not that long ago for expansion, and I have no idea what the projected growth in the school population, the comfortable growth that we could anticipate would be. And we need some metrics, I think.
Yeah, so we didn't have a slide showing those, but we have looked at some of the school enrollment. The headline takeaway is that school enrollment is increasing. It's increasing within the projections that the school district has done, knowing that they have had some big capital projects, basically renovations at each of the schools over the last handful of recent years. So that's the takeaway. It is growing. The district has made plans to accommodate that. But your point about maybe revisiting or checking some of those things, we'll certainly want to revisit, as I mentioned earlier, is this the right area? Is it appropriate? Does it need to get adjusted in one geographic direction or another? Expanded, contracted? So we want to test those things. We certainly are building on a good foundation of planning, but this is a pretty major update. And as we mentioned, the vision statement for the community is being examined. That's really one of the most foundational things. A lot of this data changes annually, right? But the values and the vision for the community that you're planning for tend to be pretty constant over time. So we want to recognize that and take an opportunity to say, how have the values changed? How constant are those? Have they evolved? And I think that was a focus of the work really last year and last fall. So we want to build on that. But we don't want to we want to check everything, but we know we're building on that foundation.
And final comment, and it gets back to your swapping slides here with the affordability and the income levels. And the median, that's good information, is very sobering, but would it not be useful to, if not in deciles, at least look at quartiles within the community of income and housing pricing to give a more tight focused picture of what it is that we're confronting and where the needs are?
There will be more analysis of that. We're essentially at the end of task one of this project. I mentioned earlier it's a big research project. We've been trying to pull everything together from all these different sources, and we're sharing that with folks to help us understand what it means. A lot of this is federal, state level stuff, and we want to understand, this is the start of the conversation about what does it mean to the people in Yarmouth that some of these numbers are what they are, and what does it feel like, and what are the implications of this? We can identify trends, but we need to hear from the community, is that good? Is it too much? Is it something we need to encourage, or is it we need to get ahead of something? So I think that's really kind of maybe a segue into, trying to get some more thoughts and reactions to this. Happy to, again, be here to answer questions and talk about what the numbers are, but we really hope to leave here tonight with a good set of comments and understanding about, what does this mean to the people in the room tonight, and try and expand that out to the rest of the community. So thank you. With that, I think we can go to the activity stations. Feel free to engage with each of these. You don't need to go in any particular order. There is a map station in the back as well. I'll kind of hang out here near the front if people have questions about the slides or anything, but thank you very much. Appreciate it.